should have done this whole thing. Somebody recommended.
Thanks. Enjoying it. You got one coming up at Southside.
Just did.
I saw the article in the paper on your speech on Memorial Day. Good job on it. I'm sorry I missed the whole thing, but from what I read of it, it was pretty good, so.
Well, we had good turnout.
Multifunctional one from Marco.
So as soon as Larry's ready to go, we'll bring the meeting to order. We're a little late, I apologize. But,
I'm ready. I can,
we just got out of a different meeting. Ready? All
is
right.
this thing on?
Test, we can hear you.
So let's call the meeting to order. Just to review a couple things here, we have, we're not gonna have the hearing about the annexation, is that right, Larry?
We are not going to discuss the annexation, that is correct.
So item 4A is off the agenda. My understanding is that was the application for that, it was withdrawn?
Yes,
Okay, so we've got 3 public hearings then. And so what we'll do is, the way this works, for those of you who haven't been here before, we'll start off with a staff presentation on the issue, and then questions for staff, and that'll be Larry. And then as audience asks questions, please come to the podium, state your name and address. We'll close the hearing, then entertain a motion from the planning commission members. Discussion on the motion at that point, and then what our action tonight is to make a recommendation to the city council. Typically, we would go to the CDC, but they just met, so we'll go right to the city council with our recommendation, and that'll be at 5 p.m. tomorrow night on that, and they'll make the final decision. So with that, the first item of business on the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting, and do I hear any changes do we need, or a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the
Approve.
minutes.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Eric. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So with that, we'll move on to the public hearings. The first one is consideration of a conditional use permit to allow a short-term rental of an entire 2-bedroom home at 1210 Lake Avenue. So Larry, would you start us off with this, please?
yes. CMP Properties has requested a conditional use permit to allow a short-term rental at 1210 Lake Avenue. It's a 2-bedroom home. The zoning ordinance allows short-term rental as a conditional use, subject to the following conditions. 1, that the building be of residential design. 2, that the owner of the establishment obtain all required state and local licenses. 3, that the owner comply with all requirements of City Code 612 rental unit registration. Also, short-term rentals must pass their rental inspection prior to rentals taking place. 4, the owner is required to pay the lodging tax and required sales taxes. 5, no cooking facilities are permitted in any guest bedroom. 6, at least 2 off-street parking spaces be provided, plus 1 space for each bedroom, so in this case, 4 parking spaces would be required. The parking areas are supposed to be screened from adjacent residential properties as provided in section 3 of the zoning ordinance, and all driveways and parking spaces must be paved. Number 7, the signage is limited to 1 single or double-faced, non-illuminated sign that does not exceed 4 square feet. The content of each sign is limited to the name and address of the facility. 8, a maximum of 2 guests are allowed per bedroom, so in this case, a maximum of 4 guests are allowed. 9, the operator shall provide evidence of rental liability insurance. 10, the owner shall maintain a log of all short-term rental activity and provide it to the city upon request. And item 11 is the owner-operator shall notify guests of all short-term rental rules and regulations and provide contact information for the property manager and emergency services. 12, the owner-operator shall maintain a safe environment by complying with building and life safety codes, prohibiting rental of accessory structures, providing smoke detectors, CO detectors, fire extinguishers, and posting the location of fire exits and escape routes. And 13, additional occupancy by use of recreational vehicles, tents, or other structures is not permitted. In this case, staff is recommending approval of the requested conditional use permit for this two-bedroom home at 1210 Lake Avenue.
Okay. Questions for Larry?
Excuse me.
Larry, I just have a quick question. Can you put the graphic up there on top? It's hard for me to see, but as I pull off of Lake Avenue, I pull in the driveway, the house is the initial building, and
Yeah.
then there's a driveway that extends back to the garage in the
Yes.
back, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Did you want it this map, or did you want it different?
No, the other one that shows your parking.
Okay,
Okay,
right here.
One more.
one more.
One more?
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay,
so then there's a back access out of there too as well, correct?
correct.
Okay, just trying to interpret. Thank you.
Okay, further questions? Okay, at this point, if there's members of the audience that want to come up to the podium and ask questions or provide a statement on this, this application for a conditional use permit, now would be the time.
Hi there, my name is Tim Wolf, and I live at 1204 Lake Avenue, which is the property adjacent to this one. And I don't have necessarily any objections, but I do have a couple of concerns and a request. You just brought up the parking issue. That is one of my concerns as well, because right now it shows spots 1 and 2 as being under a carport. And so if the person in spot number 2 wanted to leave, there couldn't be anybody behind them. Same with number 1, you can't pull out into the alley directly because of the garage in front of them. And so, like right now, we have road construction on Willow, so that's all torn up, and the people directly behind me can't park in their driveway or their garage because of the construction. So they're parked on our street, so there are 3 vehicles there from their house. And if they have issues with trying to get in and out of the driveway here, there'd be additional cars parked out on the street. And especially like during the summer here with the construction going on, we've got a lot of vehicles with the construction going up and down. And the more cars you have parked in the street, the tougher it is to get in and out of your driveway with, you know, being able to see things that are coming and going. And I would also have a little bit of a concern in the wintertime with snow removal. I don't know if that would be as big of an issue, but it is something that I thought about. If they're trying to clean the driveway and the parking spaces, you know, we already get a lot of buildup along the edges of the curb out into the street, narrowing the driving space. So that was just another concern that I have. One of the things that was brought up, and that is a concern of mine, is that since this is short-term, the people that typically tend to rent those properties are different than what has lived there in the past, which has usually been family units. And in the, I think it was rule number 6 that Larry had mentioned, it was the parking spaces have to be screened from the public. And so my request, and I had written a letter, and I believe it was presented to Larry, was a request for a privacy fence between the properties. There's already, I believe in that rule, it says it's supposed to be screened from viewing. And so my request would be to have a privacy fence between the properties for that reason. So, like I said, I don't have necessarily any straight out objection to it. I just have a couple of those concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
I'm Jim Anderson. I live at 1128 Summit Avenue, and I'm here for the next item on the agenda, which is the conditional use permit on Summit. But some of my concerns, I think, are very applicable to this situation, and I'd just like to state them now, because I have also written a letter to Larry about the Summit Avenue situation. I served 3 terms on the council, so I think I've got a unique perspective about what you guys are going through. And I also know that to come up here and say that I don't want something or a permit should be denied because I don't want it in my backyard isn't good enough. But I also know that if you look at the character of this neighborhood, you look at the character of the Summit Avenue neighborhood, you've got small lots there. You've got 50, maybe 75-foot lots. There is not a lot of screening between those lots. And the nature of our neighborhood specifically is that the people in those houses have been there a long time. And so if I'm sitting in my backyard, it's not hard to hear the conversation of somebody in the backyard next to me on either side. We had a situation south of us a couple of years ago before this permit with the short-term rental thing was put in place, where someone was renting their house out, and it was directly to the south of us. And the NDSU football team ended up there over the 4th of July, which I ended up calling the police a number of times on that. So where I'm going with this is I think that we need, as the city, to look at potentially putting a lot size, a minimum lot size, on something like this. You have to look at the character of the neighborhood, look at the lot size, and see if it fits with that. And I don't think in this case, or in the case in the next one, that it would be appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Other comments on the?
I do have a couple of letters. One is
Okay,
from
catch
Tim
you in a
and
second then. Go ahead, Larry. All right, we will have another comment.
From Tim and Cheryl Wolf, and he pretty much stated all of the information in the letter, so I'm not going to read that into the record. I do have one from a Christy Erb. She says she's unable to attend the hearing this evening. James Belden, concerning James Belden of Farmington, who is inquiring to get a permit for short-term rental of the property on, whoops, I'm at the wrong one. This is the Summit Avenue one, so I'll wait on that one. This is another letter from John and Susan Hovdenes. They're opposing both of these, the 1210 and the 1139. We find that the rental properties in our area have contributed to the deterioration of the neighborhood. The property at the northeast corner of Summit and Willow is a good example. Our recommendation is that the Detroit Lakes Planning Commission visit and review current rental properties prior to making a determination to add more short-term rental homes to a neighborhood. We also recommend that the commission, when granting short-term conditional use permits, limit them to a short period of time, after which a review is conducted by viewing the properties. Pictures before and after could be used for that continuing review. Thank you for your consideration, for you considering our opposition to granting conditional use permits to these properties. And I'll read this other letter at the next hearing.
But not right now, right?
Not
You're gonna
now.
wait. Okay, so if you wanna come up and.
Hello, Dr. Chris Pischel. I'm the owner of CMP Properties, and as well as I'm the owner and operator of Strive Chiropractic here in Detroit Lakes. I just want to come up and I would like to address some of the concerns by some of the other people in attendance, as well as you might remember I actually went through this process in early January, where it was for a different house where we did not meet the requirements, parking specifically. So I kind of wanted to address some of that, as well as obviously as somebody who's went through this process before and as a business owner here in Detroit Lakes. Obviously we are about providing a different experience. So whether that's with my patients here in Detroit Lakes, my wife was born and raised in Detroit Lakes. She's a special ed teacher at Rossman. We are all about trying to provide a different short-term rental experience. And what I mean by that is a lot of things that you guys have stated. Obviously, it's a two-bedroom house, right? I know the first item of concern that has come up on both occasions is the type of renters that will be there. And I'm here to tell you, obviously, we're not going to be catering towards any sort of parties per se, right? That's one criteria that we are actually putting into our listing, wherever that is. There's numerous different platforms. Obviously, you can advertise for these, of course, with social media. It's a great way too. But obviously, a two-bedroom house that houses 4 people, I don't believe you're going to have too many requests for for instance, a bachelor or bachelorette party. For one, it just doesn't house enough people. But for first and foremost, obviously our goal and where we see a need for short-term rentals in Detroit Lakes is not only just through the summer months, but long-term, right? Obviously, being in the healthcare field, I know numerous people in the hospital setting that need short-term stays here in Detroit Lakes. Okay, so whether that's your traveling nurses, your traveling physicians, we see a ton of people from Lake Shirts who are constantly bringing in people to work on different projects. They need alternative stay options other than hotels in this area, right? Again, hotels are great, but people are looking for a separate experience, one that feels more homey, one that has a full kitchen to where they are able to provide meals for themselves. Also touching on that is people who are in the current housing crisis I say crisis in quotations, but numerous people who are selling their houses who have to wait a week, 2-3 weeks to be able to get into their new residence, whether they're building, whether they're just needing to wait for that time period to get into another house. And as mentioned, it's a 2-bedroom house, and as stated in the January meeting, our goal is to cater towards young families, right? That's one thing that we are passionate about, not only at Strive Chiropractic, but one thing we want to pass on to with our short-term renters at this house is providing that separate experience that families simply would not get going and staying at a hotel here in town. Okay. Would like to address the parking. Obviously, that's one thing that we did not meet the requirements on last time. Obviously, this time around, I'm very confident that we meet parking requirements, regardless if the parking is parallel or if it's side by side. From my understanding with talking with you guys last time around, anything 9 by 18 space is what constitutes a parking spot, and I'm confident that we meet that. I also went ahead and since we've purchased the residence, we have added in some screening. I know that's one thing that Tim touched on as far as a privacy fence goes. Now, reading through the planning and zoning documents, there's other options other than just a privacy fence. I know there's certain plants and shrubs and that sort of thing that constitute a screening. And so I don't know if the board wants to look at this, but I have provided pictures of what the screening does entail along our entire driveway. So that is an option if you guys wish to see that.
If you wanna
Yes.
bring it and hand it up to Liz over here, we can look at it as we go along, or if you've got one for each of us.
Oh, unfortunately, it's just one package.
No, that's fine,
So-
just wasn't sure what you had.
Sure. Along with that, I know Tim addressed snow removal. I mean, personally, I don't think that's gonna be a huge issue. Obviously, owning residents here in town, we used to live on Willow, we know the importance of making sure our street stays clean, so I think we got that, covered. And like I mentioned, off-street parking is a requirement for this. There's not gonna be any parking on the streets. That's something that's gonna be in the, listing per se, as well as the requirements that the residents are provided that there's gonna be no parking on the street that's allowed per se. So, other than that, if there's any other comments or questions that I can answer for anybody, obviously I would like to be able to address those personally. Otherwise, like I mentioned, I think regardless of maybe some personal beliefs or misconceptions when it comes to short-term rentals, I know they have for some odd reason they've gotten a bad rep, right? And obviously this is gonna be a different experience for renters, and it's not gonna be quote-unquote the party scene that most people associate with short-term renting. So, any questions that the board has that I can answer?
What was your name again, I'm sorry?
Dr. Chris.
Dr. Chris.
Pischel, yep.
Thank you, just
Yep.
wanted to make sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Dr. Chris, as long as he's up here, or from the neighbors at this point too?
Yeah,
We don't
please.
wanna do
Yeah,
much back and forth, but it'd be legit to ask him a question.
Well, I'm not so much of a question as it is just a comment. I know, I read in the application that you're looking to try and accommodate traveling doctors and nurses, which I think is great. The only issue I have is that, I can target a certain market and say, this is the consumer that I want.
for sure.
That doesn't mean it's gonna be
Correct,
And so
yep.
once you get a conditional use permit, there's nothing there that says, I can only rent to these people. With the proximity that we are to Lakeside, the Hub, Zorba's and stuff, yeah, it may not be conducive to like a bachelor or bachelorette party, but, you know, a couple of bedrooms is not gonna stop 3, 4 guys from saying, hey, let's go to Charlie Lakes for the weekend, I know this house we can rent, we'll split it 4 ways, we can watch all the bars that we want, and, you know, no big deal. So, that's one of the concerns that I have. I did see that you planted some little bushes there, which I think looks nice, but is it gonna help with any sort of privacy factor?
Correct, yep. So I'd like to address both of those. I'll address the screening first. I know in the planning, the zoning document, I know shrubs do not, or plants do not have to be full mature size at the time of planting, but they have to, of course, obtain a certain size over a given time period to be, you know, considered that. So I agree with that. You know, obviously they're young. They're about, you know, 2.5, 3 feet tall as of right now. So obviously, given time, they will mature and provide a little bit more screening. And obviously, to address your point too, obviously, if you guys have ever been on any short-term rental sites, obviously the 2 biggest ones are Airbnb, VRBO. Again, not saying specifically that we're gonna be using those particular platforms, but I know that both of them have a screening process, right? Obviously, you are able to screen your renter prior to accepting a stay, right? So obviously, I can't say here with 100% and say we're going to be able to avoid that with 100% certainty, because that'd be false, right? Obviously, we can do our best to screen our renters, and obviously with that provided screening, I know obviously every single renter on those major sites, they have reviews that hosts. So if you are obviously hosting residents, you are the host. So hosts are able to also review people who are renting, for instance, an Airbnb or a VRBO, right? So if those people have a history of, you know, inviting friends over or partying or loud noise, you name it, I would say the vast majority of hosts will put that in that renter's review per se. So again, obviously we're gonna do our best to make sure that we have the quote-unquote type of renters that we are going to accommodate to, but obviously in any situation you can never 100%, you know, make sure that doesn't happen. So.
Can I also ask one question too? I'm not sure.
Sure, another question would be in order.
I don't know what the definition is for the parking spaces. I know you had mentioned a certain size. Does that include accessibility to that spot? Because like I said, you know, like spots 1 and 2 are only accessible from
Yep.
the street, not from the alleyway. So if somebody says, well, I'm going to park in spot 3 or 4, spots 1 and 2 are unavailable.
Yep.
You know, or whatever. So
Typical residential parking is not required to be independently accessible. So if you have families, you jockey your cars around and let each other in and out, and the same thing would hold for a long-term rental and for a short-term rental.
So you can stack cars in there. I mean,
Okay.
that's
I
allowed,
didn't know,
and,
so I just
no,
thought-
and you can block them, but it's the same deal as when my kids come to visit and we have to move cars around whenever mom and dad wanna get out, so, but yeah, it would be that kind of concept, so. But I was gonna ask that, while it meets the requirements, a lot of times when I've used VRBO or Airbnb, there will be notes from the owner. I think it would be, you know, neighborly, for example, as to one of your notes to remind people to please not park on the street so that they can be good neighbors and to expect to move their cars around. I think if you could do that, a lot of that,
Yeah,
that would go a long way towards helping that situation. Just otherwise, people won't think of it. But
For
I
sure.
think most people want to be good, good guests.
Absolutely.
You know, otherwise they get a bad rating and can't get a.
And that's one great point to, I don't know, like you said, Dan, you've used those platforms before. Most people, if you, as a renter, let's say you book a stay through these major, you know, short-term rental sites, As soon as you have, you know, one bad review on there, I would say the vast majority of hosts are going to deny your request. You know, obviously, I can't say the same for, you know, any other houses on the lake that can, you know, have 10, 15, 20 people, you know, staying at their place. Obviously, you're catering to a different crowd per se, or a good sized family reunion, but obviously that's not gonna be the case here, so it's a good point.
One other thing to mention, we don't get this out much, but to the neighbors there's actually a licensure requirement in addition to getting this conditional use permit, and that license is, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry, because this is administrative detail, but the license is required every year. And if there were complaints or our building inspector found that the rental was not in requirement, that license wouldn't be granted the next year.
That's a short-term, or that's a rental registration permit.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yes.
which is required of any rental unit in the city, whether it's short-term or whatever, regular, long-term. So this isn't granted and then the city walks away from it. There's inspections and expectations on that need to be met. So, just so the neighbors know. So if there were problems, I would encourage you to call the city and let them know if there were parties happening, or with any rental unit, frankly, in your neighborhood. So, other questions for Dr. Chris or of the staff here? Okay, well, question
Yeah,
from
Larry, I wanna
Nancy.
clarify the screening, and I know very well that you can plant things, and the expectation is that they will grow to be larger. I recall that there is a height, that if it's something that's small, that it should be expected to grow to a certain height. Am I
It
remembering
should be
that correctly?
expected to grow at least to a height of 6 feet.
6 feet, okay. So from what I could see on the pictures, they're peonies, is
So-
that correct?
Those are just the, so for instance, it would be directly west of Tim, the renters that are in that location, those peonies are actually on their property. So as far as that screening goes, that is something that they have already, that was there prior to even us, planting those, so, believe so, those get to be, I don't know if they get to be 6 feet, but they definitely get to be,
I don't think they get to be 6 feet, so
No.
I'm wondering if the things that you planted are
Oh,
you
goodness,
expecting
yeah.
them to grow to 6 feet?
yep, so the things that
It's gonna
we.
be between you and Mr. Wolf's?
Yep,
property.
correct, yeah, so those things, again, between, I mean, depending on what site you look at, could be anywhere from 5 to 6 feet plus, at maturation, so.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I guess I'd like make one comment on that too with the screening. It's in years past, a lot of people are always asking for the privacy fence, but we believe that natural vegetation is a better screening than a fence. So that's, we kind of like to push it that way, so. If that's the way they go, I think that's the best route.
All right, thank you
Okay,
for your time.
thank you, Dr. Chris. Further comments? If not, I'm gonna close the hearing. Okay, I'm gonna close the public hearing and look for a motion on this.
I'll make a motion to approve the conditional
motion.
use as presented.
Okay, motion to approve with the conditions as presented. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Sean. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the table on this, so, further comments or questions from the planning commission? Okay, well, with that, I'm gonna call the question. So all in favor of the motion to, approve the conditional use permit at 1210 Lake Avenue, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries, so we will make that recommendation to, the full city council then, tomorrow evening. So with that, we're gonna open up the public hearing on a conditional use permit, for 1139 Summit Avenue. And we have gotten some comments on this already, so I would only ask that those not be repeated. But Larry, would you please,
Yeah, this is a request from James Belden to have a short-term rental for an entire 3-bedroom home at 1139 Summit Avenue. I'm not going to read all of the conditions that I just read for the previous one, but basically, They would be required to have 5 parking spaces, and the maximum number of guests that they could have are 6. And then they would be required to meet all of the other conditions. Staff recommends approval of this conditional use permit, subject to the conditions that we talked about. I do have some letters. Should I read those into the record
Yes, you should.
first, or should we? Okay. This is from Christy Erb, saying she can't attend the hearing, but she personally opposes this request. One of my big concerns is we have such small lots, and we are super close to our neighbors in circumstance, and in this neighborhood is a family-oriented neighborhood. Our homes and driveways are super close to each other, and I feel the extra people and noise throughout the week would be very distracting and unappealing to our quiet family neighborhood. I don't feel a short-term rental would be in the best interest of our neighborhood. I also have a letter from Jim Anderson. Jim, would you like me to read this into the record, or do you? Okay, I will do that. Thank you for taking the time to allow this letter to be read into the minutes. We are opposed to the conditional use permit to allow short-term rentals of the property at 1139 Summit Avenue. Our opposition stems from personal experience with short-term rentals in our neighborhood. In December of 2017, the house immediately adjacent to our house on the south side, 1134 Summit Avenue, was sold. The following spring, I had a conversation with the new property owner who said they wouldn't be living there full-time, but we may see people around on weekends from time to time. I thought little of that until the summer of 2018 rolled around and different people began showing up on a regular basis. There is a limited driveway parking at that address, so we not only endured our new neighbors regularly, but they had guests. This meant parking on the street. Depending on how many guests they had, they would spill over to in front of our house as well. The lots in this neighborhood are mostly 75 to 50 feet wide. This makes the neighborhood very cozy. It also means if someone is out there in the backyard, you can hear conversations and noises quite easily. Oftentimes, the short-term renters would have bonfires in the backyard. With our bedroom being on the back of the house, we could hear people even if they weren't being overly loud. We don't have air conditioning, so we sleep with our windows open. These bonfires oftentimes lasted well past midnight. The short-term rentals came to a head during the 4th of July in 2019. Some members of the NDSU football team rented the house for this period. As they were hauling cooler after cooler into the house, I went to have a preemptive conversation with them. I told them we weren't opposed to drinking and partying as long as they didn't go too late. Well, that didn't work. On the night of the 4th, there was a party with at least 50 to 75 people outside of the house. I ended up calling the police between 9 and 10 p.m. This worked for a short period of time as most of the people went inside or went to the bars along the beach. As the night went on, those people returned and the party once again moved back outside. I once again called the police. As a result of many small incidents that weren't reported, and the final blow with the NDSU football team, our outlook on short-term rentals is jaded. We feel that this is the wrong use of a single-family residence in an older neighborhood where there is little or no elbow room. He says he apologizes for not being at the meeting in person, but that was a different meeting, so
Thank
he
you
is
for
here
coming.
tonight, and he would be happy to discuss this with the planning commission members. I also have a letter here from Julie Sanders. The conditions for short-term rentals are attached. Oh, never mind, I'm sorry, that's my note to her. I have a letter here from Jan and Lynn Peterson. Larry, it says, I want it to be known that I am in opposition to a conditional use permit to allow short-term rental, or any rental for that matter, at this location. I am located 3 houses to the north of this address. My reasons are as follows. Rental homes devalue all the property values in our neighborhood. 2, it is never good for a neighborhood to have absentee owners. Why did a person from 250 miles away purchase this property in the first place? 3, they are typically junky looking. The lawn is usually not mowed and the yard is not maintained. Sidewalks are never kept clear. 4, continuous rotation of tenants and neighbors, never know who's living there. And 5, current rental or absentee owners on this block are 1134 Summit, 1136 Summit, and 1159 Summit. Thank you for your consideration in this matter. And that's all the letters I have.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Questions for Larry? Jim, if you have anything else that you wanna add on at this point, you can, but.
No, that's fine. I don't have any questions at this point. Other than, I guess, the screening for the driveway, I would be interested to see how that's going to happen, being what, what's right up against,
Sure, come on up to the podium.
I really have no major complaints about it, other than the fact that I'm right next door to them. And I've listened to all of this talk about the other rental out there, and you pretty well all said yes, no matter what they asked you. So I really can't complain, but the lots are small. If they put a screen up, he's got about 3 feet, and that's all you need, I understand that. But is a screen gonna do that much if you're talking noise? Not only that, in the wintertime, I'm gonna like it, because he's gonna make a snow block for me, and I'm not gonna get all the snow blowing west and northwest down Summit Avenue, because I'm at the bottom of the hill.
And could we have your name and
So-
address for the record?
Pardon?
Could we have?
Ken
your name?
Anderson,
Okay, thank you.
1143 Summit. And I've met the couple, and they're nice people. But again, they're not from DL, so they can't control necessarily what's going on in that building unless they have somebody who's overseeing it. And I'd like to know if they have that. And what is a short-term rental? Is it 1 day, 2 days?
Short-term
week?
rental is anything less than 30 days.
Anything less than 3 days?
30 days.
30 days, sir.
Okay, I
Yep,
have
yep.
never,
No, good
heard-
question, yeah.
but I'm the next door neighbor, and I don't have a lot of complaints, but I know getting anything done, what does the zoning regulations have for rentals? Because we don't have a lot of rentals. I've lived there 47 years. I've never had more than 2 rentals at any one time. And now all of a sudden, I'm looking at short-term rental.
Larry,
You know, and I don't know what your zoning regulations are.
The zoning regulations just deal with the type of use, they don't address the ownership. So it can be condominiumized, or rental, or owner occupied, we
Yep.
just don't address that.
pretty much any single-family house can be rented in
I
Detroit
understand
Lakes,
that.
yeah.
But I just want to know what short-term.
Actually, I'm thinking that we have more regulation of short-term rentals regarding parking and all that than we do for regular houses that are rented, am I right, Larry?
That is correct.
Yeah, so,
I don't have any other things, that's.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Did you have something you wanted to? Sure, come on up.
Hi there, we're Jim and Carmen Belden, so we're the property owners. And we would like to address some of these concerns and issues. One from the earlier letter, wondering why somebody 250 miles away bought this property. It's because we have a lot of family up here. I actually spent all of my summers here. My grandparents lived on Otter Tail Lake. My dad graduated from Battle Lake and my mom graduated from Perm. We have family that lives in Frazee, Detroit Lakes, and Otter Tail, so we spend most of our summers up here, and we have 3 small children. So we actually bought this to be our second home, so we have a place to stay when we come visit all of our family and friends that live up here with our 3 children. And so that's our primary focus of this property, but we were looking for the conditional short-term rental permit so we can help supplement the second mortgage, because it's something that's kind of heavy to deal with by ourselves. So we were thinking that that would be a way that we could do this and also have some of our family and friends stay there when we are not using it. So that kind of addressed that first question on why somebody 250 miles away bought it. And then the second question, oh, I forgot. I'm sorry, Larry read it in the second letter, and now I forgot what the question was to address, but if you want to say anything, you can.
Yeah, we're often up here once or twice a month as is, so we were just looking for a place of our own that we could stay at. And like you said, all of your family's up here, but on the flip side of that too, her family and my family have become good friends, so my sister's actually getting married in Detroit Lakes, so we were excited we could give them a place to stay here at the end of June. Then I have another sister who married a guy from Henning, and they come up here all the time with no place to stay, so just it's been kind of a cool thing that we have the opportunity to share that property with some of our friends and family, and yeah, supplementing the income, and actually for the short-term stays as well. I think the minimum we have on it is 6-night minimum is what we'd be looking to do. We do have a property manager who's going to set this all up.
That was the second thing I was going to address in terms of somebody that is there to deal with any problems. We wanted a property manager since we are so far away that if any issues did arise, they can be handled immediately, as well as having any tenants that are gonna be that they're vetted. We make sure that we have quality people that would be staying there when we aren't there, because since this isn't a business for us, it is truly our second home. We don't want any damages to the property either. We wanna make sure it's taken care of, and we wanna make sure that neighbors are happy and there's not issues.
And as far as cleaning up the yard, snow removable, mowing the lawn, that sort of thing, right now, I mean, if we're up here, we obviously do it ourselves, but we also have her parents up here who will come and take care of it every once in a while, and her brother as well, who lives in Frazee. So we do have a lot of those types of issues.
And we actually just had a
taken care
tree come down on the driveway, and my dad came up same day. It happened overnight, and he was up by like 10 a.m. and he had his chainsaw, and it was completely gone within a few hours because we don't want to be burdening.
So we
have a
lot
burden
of,
on our neighbors.
We have a
so,
lot of that work.
Yeah, we have a lot
Under
of
control,
help.
I hope, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, or?
I guess as far as the rentals go, I think the last property mentioned it. We're really looking at hopefully the same type of renters, because obviously, I mean, the loud parties and things like that, that's a detriment to us as well. We want to keep the place nice and enjoy it ourselves, so that's, you know, we're hopeful that we always can get the best renters possible.
And with it being a 3-bedroom, we do have bunk beds in one room, so really, I mean, it's a 4-adult max in our situation as well. So we have a 6-person max on our listing also, and as we said, ours isn't gonna be all the time since we plan on staying there, so it will just be kind of few and far between when we're not using it.
Yeah, I can't remember, the conditions include, Larry, a maximum number of people, I mean, 2
Yes,
per
they're
bedroom, right?
limited to 6 people.
So if there were 50 people that showed up, for example, you know, and looked like they were staying, that's an exaggeration, say 2 dozen or a dozen or a dozen and a half, that were staying there, then
That would
the
be a
property
violation.
would be in violation of the
Yes.
conditional use permit and would potentially have their license pulled, right?
Correct, or they could be fined for a violation
Yeah.
of the zoning ordinance.
Yeah. So one thing that we've been trying to do with this ordinance is to get a handle on those, on the Wild West that it was before we had the ordinance in
Okay.
place, just so you know. So you should, I mean, if that sort of thing does happen, it puts the conditional, I'm not addressing you, but the rest of that, I mean, it puts the conditional use permit at risk if any of those conditions are violated. That's why they're there, so.
Well, and another thing for us too, the property manager we're working with, they deal with that specifically as well. If they have over the limit of guests, they have personally sent the
Yep.
guests out and ended their stay early.
And we do have a ring
Okay.
doorbell, so we can
We can
monitor the people coming in and
see
out. So
all
if
that
we
kind of
see
stuff.
something happening that doesn't look right, we can call the property manager immediately to address those concerns
Yeah,
that we have.
and again, I would say to the neighbors that there's more protections for short-term rental, the neighbors of short-term rental property than somebody just renting out the house, cause they don't have all these conditions, so. I understand things can happen, but there's a lot of work went into trying to, see that it doesn't, so. Again, I'm not criticizing you two, just telling everybody, nobody pays attention to this ordinance until somebody's gonna get a house in their neighborhood, so, yeah, I understand. Thank you.
I've got a
Oh,
question.
question.
Yes.
Go ahead,
I'm
Nancy.
not seeing in the pictures clarification of where the 5 parking spots are.
Do you have?
Oh, so if you can see that we,
Well,
yeah, she has it right up there.
Larry, do you have a more detailed one
Well,
that shows?
So I
This
just did the measurement, it's 90 feet or 100 feet.
Okay,
100.
So,
It's 100 feet, yep.
so they have room for 5 space.
You know, yeah, you've
Yes.
checked it out, they have room for the
I
5.
was confused on that right away.
It's all measured out, if it's easier to see, we have the paper copy that was sent, but,
Thank you very much.
yes, so it goes all the way through, so there's enough for the
Okay.
cars to fit.
It is hard to
Yep.
interpret though.
And again, if you
And presently, there is no screening between your property and Mr.
No,
Anderson's,
we-
is that correct?
Correct, we wanted to talk with our neighbor actually to see like what they preferred to and what would be best, whether it was like a privacy fence, which he said would stop the snow, if that was something he was more interested in, or if like shrubs, we actually wanted his opinion since the houses are so close, we wanted him to be happy with whatever was put there.
Yeah, this is not the first one that we've had that has been very close to the next door neighbors, and just to let you know, there's been discussion at that time, that if the neighbors really oppose having a fence because it blocks their visibility, that it's a matter of coordinating with the neighbors and having it be okayed by the neighbors. Larry clarified that for me. Did you then get some kind of a written,
In that particular case, the neighbor requested that they not put the fence up, so we put it in as a condition that if the neighbor signed a letter saying they didn't want it, that we would allow them to have it without the screening.
right? So there is that condition that isn't written here
It
that we
sounds
have
like
dealt
this
with
neighbor
before.
wants the screening, but
Yeah.
not necessarily sure what type.
Okay.
So, I'll need to get Jim, here, he's doing a little sidebar, but he had a question, so.
Okay, yeah, no,
Okay.
that'd be great, and we'd love to.
And he
get
might
his
have it for
opinion
you, but you can
on
go
that.
and sit down,
Okay,
so,
thanks.
okay, it's okay. We'll just give it a minute. Jim, did you have a question?
I was, just about the screening, Dan, I was wondering what
Okay.
their plans were for the screening, but I'm, very happy to hear that they're gonna work with Ken, you know, to find a common ground there. Thanks,
Great,
Dan.
that's what we wanna see, so, thank you very much, so. Okay, other questions for Beldens or Larry? Okay, with that, I'm gonna close the public hearing and, entertain a motion to approve or deny. Sean?
I move to approve the conditional use permit with the correction in line 8 of the word 4 in a maximum of 4 guests to a maximum of 6
Yes,
guests.
thank you.
So
I
that it
caught that,
matches.
too.
All right, thank you for catching that.
I
So,
will
appreciate
second
it.
that
And
motion.
Second from Liz, so, okay, so we have a motion and a second, further discussion from the planning commission. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Again, this will go to the full city council tomorrow night. Jim, I'm sure you're familiar with how all that works, but it'll be on the agenda then for tomorrow night. Thank you for coming. Stay
Thank
if
you
you
for your
want,
time.
but all right, you guys. But we'll be moving on to the next public hearing, which is for the refuge. They're requesting a conditional use permit to allow operation of a state licensed substance abuse disorder treatment facility and serving up to 28 individuals, including a 2,200 square foot building addition. So Larry, would you let us know what's going
I
on
don't
with
know
this
if you
one?
noticed this
Thank you.
application, but whoever filled it out has the neatest handwriting.
I did
I've ever
notice
seen.
that. Very
Amazing.
organized.
Anyway.
Good job.
The request here is for a conditional use permit from the refuge, and they would like to increase the number of residents that they serve from 15 up to 28 individuals. And they're also requesting approval of a 2,200 square foot addition, and that would have a 3-foot side yard setback. So as one of the conditions, we would have that the 2,200 square foot addition be allowed with a 3-foot side yard setback. The other conditions that I've recommended would be that the facility house no more than 28 individuals, that the owner obtain the appropriate state licenses to operate a substance abuse disorder treatment facility, that the owner meet all the on-site parking requirements, and that all of the design, operating, and licensing requirements of appropriate federal, state, and local agencies are met. And with those conditions, I would recommend approval.
Okay, questions for Larry?
Yeah, I do. On the 3-foot side yard, I'm looking at the diagram, Larry, again, and it looks as if the 3-foot side yard is on the south portion of the property. Am I correct?
East.
Is it
would
east?
be on the east side, yes.
Okay. And the neighbor to that side yard is?
I believe that's Lake Shirts.
It is.
The east would be either Arrow Electric or CenturyLink.
Oh, okay, so that,
Oh, you're right, you're right.
okay.
Lake Shirts doesn't own everything there yet,
I
Larry.
know.
They,
They're
Lake
close.
Shirts would be to the south.
It was
of that
probably the
building,
best
right?
guess.
Okay.
Well, they also put a building up in that area, though, a
Yes.
warehouse on that street, but I can't remember here. Thank goodness Eric remembers where everything is at. I don't.
Thank you.
I should. I drive by there often enough. Anyway. Other questions for Larry? Are you Anderson St. George?
Yeah,
Am I saying that right?
yes, you'll see.
Okay, if you have anything to add at this point, you're welcome to come to the podium, so.
Okay. I do have some projected floor plans, if you're comfortable with me approaching the
Sure.
board, I can share with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Anderson St. George's. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for both Compassion House and Daystar Recovery Center, both doing businesses under the refuge. And both Compassion House and Daystar Recovery Centers are residential treatment facility providing treatment for men struggling with drugs and alcohol, disorder. And our goal is to teach them positive coping skills on how to live a life free of mood-altering substances, how to be a productive member of society and law-abiding citizen. I'm also a board member for the Minnesota Association of Resources for Chemical Health and also the chairperson for the World Health and Disparities Committee. And why this information is relevant to this presentation is because within the World Health and Disparities Committee, we document disparities in rural Minnesota, and we collect the data and propose policies to overcome them. And some of the three major disparities that we discovered were housing, transportation, and workforce crisis. Within our work, I was able to testify at the House of Representatives and the Senate to advocate for my field and show why we want to have more resources to hire LADCs. LADCs or licensed alcohol and drug counseling. And at this moment, I know that multiple treatment services are closing their door because they don't have enough staff. And I personally, as the executive officer, I found myself working both at Compassion House and Daystar Recovery overnight. And then I have to go home, take naps, and come back and lead group counseling. And that's actually very, very tiresome and cause compassion fatigue and stuff like that. I have also some data from Department of Human Services. In isolated rural areas, there are nearly 14,000 people for every licensed alcohol and drug counselor. In small towns, it's about 3,614 people. And like right now, we are experiencing an opioid crisis. A lot of people continuing to use drugs to cope with, daily life problems or medical issues. And in order to be proactive, I approached the board and proposed that we merge both of our facilities in order to prevent shutting down one of our facilities. So Compassion House is licensed for 15 clients, same for Daystar. We would merge both facility and we would cut down from 30 to 28 clients to meet the capacity of the building. And as you may see in the printed documents that are submitted to you, the new addition would be where we would not house clients in that addition. It would be group room, and each group room would meet the criteria or recommendations for DHS, and I believe that our architect would follow also construction codes. This is not my area of expertise. So the first floor would be 2 group rooms, staff office, nursing station, storage room, staff restroom,
common area, we are big into self-care. We take our clients fishing, we take them for nature walks, we take them to the DLCCC to exercise twice a week. And as a breather, after each 15 minutes group, we wanted to create area where they can play ping pong or pool table or add other entertainment so that they can still learn and practice how to have fun without using without altering substances. And in the new addition, we would have also a small gym for them to exercise, during their downtime until we take them to the DLCCC. On the second floor would be where we would house all our counselors and nurse, and the plan can speak for itself. And I have an elevated plan on page 4 and 5, and the page 6 would be the existing plan of Daystar facility where we would be using to house the additional clients that we would be transferring to that facility. Since we both doing business under the refuge, all we would have to do is working with Department of Human Services to merge both licenses and potentially sell one of our assets to generate income to build the new addition. And also, in 2024, we have something called 1115 waiver, where DHS recommend that all treatment facility needs to be in network with other treatment facility, whether that means withdrawal management, whether that's mean detox. Well, it will save us a lot of time to just have one facility, because that will allow us to have enough finance to hire more people, since they require that we have a nurse practitioner, which we are not required to have. And other evidence is merging both facility will be conducive to our budget, because not only we serve members of our community that struggles with the addiction, but we also hire members of our community close to between 25 and 35. So we want to keep employing members of our community. As a result, merging will be better for us financially in order to offer better benefits to our staff in order to continue keep our doors open. I'm open to any questions.
Would you be remodeling this existing section to create more bedrooms or not?
Essentially, so the existing office, if you're looking at, let me see, where it says the entrance on Office 4, Office 3, Office 1,
Yep.
those would be transformed into rooms, and we would have to, apply regress windows and for them to meet requirements. And the entire building is currently has sprinkler system and meet all requirements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further questions for Mr. St. George's?
Your facility will handle both outpatient as well as inpatient?
Not for now. We are only licensed by the Department of Human Services as a residential facility.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you. So I'll close the public hearing, and I'd be looking for a motion on this.
Larry, did we have any comments on this particular?
No comments.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank
It
you.
As
is
presented.
unfortunately a very much needed facility.
Absolutely.
A second from Chris. Thank you. So I have a motion from Liz and a second from Chris to approve the conditional use permit. Further discussion?
Is that 3-foot setback? It looks like it's reasonably consistent with what's there already.
Yes.
what
Okay,
I thought,
that's
too.
what I was kind of looking at on the plan. Thank you.
I did have a question for Anderson. So presently, doesn't your company have 2 buildings? There are 2 different buildings?
Yes, one on 811 H Street,
Right.
and half a block away on the next to Lake Shore's property is 921 H Street.
Okay. And so you're keeping both buildings open, expanding this one?
No, We will expand and until we find a buyer who's willing to work with us. we
And then
will
it's
sell
all
the
gonna be in
property.
this building?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments from the planning commission? Okay, if none, I will, although we have a motion and a second on the table to approve this conditional use permit, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So, Larry, we took, again, item 4B off the table. Is there anything else that needs to come up tonight?
I have nothing else.
Okay, anything from any of the planning commission members? Liz?
The only comment, and Jen answered, I think, my comment was, and I think you did too, Larry, I've never been through an annexation, and I did look in our zoning ordinance for annexation rules. Is that part of our role and responsibility here, or is that city council?
Typically, the hearings for that, for annexations, go right directly to the city council.
Okay.
So when we have an annexation, I bring it here just as information, so you're aware that it's happening and
Okay.
where it's at.
Hence the reason it was in new business and not as a public hearing.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Liz. Nancy, anything?
Oh, I'm good.
Sean? Don? Eric?
I'm good.
Chris? Kyle? All right, good. We have a new member joining us.
We do. His name is Tyler Swenson. I have not met him, but he's going to be appointed tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So next month, we should have another person. And our next meeting is scheduled for,
June 23rd,
so
so
it's coming right up.
10 days.
Yeah. Do we have a lot on the agenda yet, or?
We have 2 items on the agenda. One is a short-term rental. No, wait a minute, I'm getting confused. I'm thinking of the July meeting.
Oh.
We have 2 items, but I don't recall what they are.
All right.
Offhand, I'm in this mode right now.
Okay. Sure, Jen, do you remember?
You're off. It's a Monday night.
And you're gonna send that to us tomorrow, right?
517 Patrick Walken for the non-conforming use
Okay.
expansion permit. And then there's another one for a variance, for an
Mm.
18-foot, 7-inch side yard setback instead of
That one.
807.
And what night is that? I'm
What she
sorry.
said, that is
23rd,
Thursday.
Yeah,
Regular
we'll be
meeting.
back.
Perfect.
So it look like everybody can make
Put
it
it on
that
there
meeting?
now, yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I couldn't make the last one either, so here we are. Anyway, well, thank you. With that, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for coming tonight, getting our business taken care of, and we'll have some items in for the city council tomorrow. So, thank you.
Formally reserved.
Yes.
If it's not in the calendar, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I know. That is happening, yes. You know, so here I am retired, my wife's retired.
Yeah.
And I'm doing our calendar, and I looked at it and I said, we have one